Okay, shopkeepers, we got the new bearing hub, and like I said, I thought it came with the new speed sensor on there. That's a good deal. I got the 8 bolts that go through and put them on the wire wheel and clean the threads up a little bit. And I'm going to take a grinder disc or sandpaper or something, kind of clean the rust, get a good surface here so you get a true fit and you don't have any run out, so you got wobble in the rotor. But anyway, we get that set on there and start running some bolts through there. Now you feed your speed sensor wire through there, and don't drop your phone. Just get your speed sensor wire through there, and then see if I can do it. That rotor's heavy. Do it with one hand. You got to have the little squares notched out, lined up with your square flange on your bearing hub, and then make sure your holes are lined up, and start dropping some bolts in there. Then you'll need a good solid driver to push those through, and I recommend that you don't hold it like that, because you'll be short a finger and a knuckle and the web of your hand, and use a good pair of pliers to hold that, and then you can really whack it and you won't hurt yourself. I like to stack the bearings up, then you can run the stud bolts through there, and they'll go right through the other holes, and it keeps it up so you can drive them all the way around, and they won't be hitting your work surface. They'll just go straight on through, and it won't hurt nothing. And you get a good solid piece to drive through, where it won't absorb the impact. It'll go through the stud and force it in. And this is the way I do it. Use a pair of pliers to hold it so I can get a good whack on it and won't hit my hand. You could put this on a press, but it's about a 4-handed operation, so I just do it like this. See if we can get this phone set up here. You can see what I'm doing. Now I always kind of go around. I don't just drive one end. Kind of go around it. When you get them in there, seat it all the way, there'll be a difference in the sound, and you'll know you have them seated. Seated, seated, that's seated. Just be careful not to damage your speed sensor. Let's see, I think I've got one more I gotta get yet. I like these Nip X pliers, but I don't like these got the slip jaw. I like the ones with the push button on it, and you got more position options. And seated, that's seated, that's seated. Okay. Anyway, they're all the way around. Wait. Now, I'm going to leave the flange off of there for the dually until I get this on, because for one, it makes it a little bit lighter. I'll get everything situated. We'll be back with you. Now then, when you go to putting this on, you don't want to forget to put your rock guard on there, because you'll have to take it back apart and put that on. I got these bolts preset in there, and I took them and wire wheeled them, cleaned the threads up a little bit, so it'll be a little bit easier to go in. And well, that's not going to want to spring back, so we'll just have to gently guide it back into the seal as we guide it into the spline spindle there. And I have to set this down. Be back in a second. Okay, when you get them 4 bolts there started, you need to make sure that you can see how to get the light right. There's 1 bolt, 4th one down there, and the 2 on the back side. But this rock guard has got to get me a pointer. A tab that's bent backwards. It goes up underneath the rotor, but it goes between the rotor and the top of your speed sensor down in there. Let's see if I can get a little better lighting on there. There you can see it. So you might want to make sure that you don't have your speed sensor wire between the rock guard and the rotor. Got to stay out in the clear. Get those bolts all started, and then shove your CV shaft through, and you get a fancy new nut with it. Go ahead and get that started, and then we'll tighten them bolts that holds the bearing hub into the knuckle assembly. And anybody don't know, this is the knuckle assembly. Some of you may not know, but others probably do. And if you remember, I took a hammer and was bashing on them bolts to drive that bearing hub loose. If you had a slide hammer, you could put on here and pull that off, but I don't have a slide hammer and I ain't gonna buy one. So I had to put them bolts on a bench grinder, kind of clean the heads up a little bit, right there, where I kind of bent them over a little bit and kind of mushroomed them out. That way I could get a socket on them. And you can see how it was a lot easier to just drop that tie rod in to, so I can swivel that knuckle back and forth, and not have to struggle to turn the wheel. Of course, you could start it up, keep running around the truck, turning the wheel right and left, but I've got the oil line off for a repair there. Okay, The bearing hub is tight back up against the knuckle assembly, and we'll tighten this up. It's supposed to be like 180 foot-pounds or something, just German specs, you know, good and tight. We'll swap over the impact and get that tightened up. Now we got that tight. That nut was a 36 millimeter. That other one must have been corroded off a little bit. I was using a 35, but it did fit kind of snug. But anyway, we got that done, and I think that's the same bearing hub for a vehicle that does not have rear dual rear wheels. But instead of driving your rotor on the back side, it comes up here on the front. Your wheel stud thread press into this, your bearing flange. But because we got dual rear wheels, you got this, I don't know what to call it. They call it that thing right there. And a spider there. Maybe he'll go get a mosquito or something to eat it. Anyway, we cleaned these threads up and make them a little easier to go on. And we'll get them nuts on and get them tight and be ready to put the brake rotor or the caliper on and get the rest of it together. And we got these nuts on, and you want to make sure that these are tight, all 8 of them, because this extension housing here, those hold this on obviously, and then these hold the wheels on. You know, so if you don't get them tight, it's just like leaving your lug nuts loose. Those will work loose, so you need to get them tight. I don't know, it's probably somewhere around 90 to 110 foot-pounds, but you can take and put your rotor is vented, you can take and put a screwdriver or something in there, and it'll turn up against the back of the caliper, and that'll hold it, so you can go, well, I didn't have it in there very good, but you can go around and make sure those are all good and tight. And fellas, when you put your brake caliper on, I've seen this several times, go out on a brake job, and these 2 bolts, get the light in there, these 2 bolts right here and right there behind the brake hose, if you don't get them tight, they can fall out, and of course it'll be trapped in the wheel. It can't fall off unless you got an oversized wheel and there's enough clearance. This will come between the rotor and the wheel and fall out. That'd be pretty bad, but I've seen a lot of them bottom bolts loose and they fall out, and you go to stop, of course you're going forward, and that thing will hike up there faster than Kamala Harris's skirt, and of course it digs into the wheel and makes the wheel lock up, or it really grinds hard on the surface of the wheel. So you want to make sure and get them tight. They're only like maybe 25 or 30 inch-pounds. I mean, it's just good and tight. I mean, you don't have to stick no 8-foot pipe on there, but make sure you get them tight so they don't come out. And usually after you do a brake service, before you move the vehicle, put your foot on the brake pedal and pump the pedal a time or two to re-extend that piston to close that gap so it's snug, because you go to back out or pull out or something and have to stop quick because a child or somebody running in front of or behind the car, you push on the pedal, and the pedal will go all the way to the floor because this piston is compressed. So make sure you pump that brake pedal up 2 or 3 times till you get a good solid pedal, and then you can move your vehicle. Anyway, we got the wheel speed sensor back behind, between the knuckle and the sheet metal, the rock guard, and come up and back in the holder bracket here and up here, and then it's connected right back up there on the frame. And we're going to call this job done as far as the video is concerned. We just make sure we get these nuts tight, and then go ahead and get the wheel put back on it, and we'll get this truck up for sale, because old boy pulled the trigger on a new truck, and I decided it was time to let this 24-year-old truck go. So you boys keep your nuts tight and your wire looms secure, and as always,